grab your pillows, grab a snack, snuggle up next to the fire, wherever you're at, and we will jump right into it. So first off, there's a couple things that happened this week, right? We've got the new housing starts. We've got new home sales. The bond market is just not cooperating. So let's get into it. What was your kind of recap of the week? And then we'll kind of take it one thing at a time.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to put it on a billboard as far as like how things went for interest rates this week, it would be this was a sucky week for rates. And the reason, and we talked about this before, is that, so we look at technical data, right? So we're looking at data points with like inflation. We're looking at liquidity in treasury markets and mortgage-backed securities and bonds and all these different things. And normally this technical data guides you pretty well. And, as you find in all like unprecedented times, right? I was really trying to pronounce the C in there and then into the D, because I want to say like president. But anyway, the inflation that we've experienced, and some of these numbers are literally setting highest they've been in the last 30 or 40 years. So if you think about, I just always think of like how far technology has come. Like think about what a different world it was. So we're still trying to use some of these same gauges. And so you've got that going on. And then you've got Europe and other countries who are still experiencing really, really high, like their inflation is actually, like where our inflation, we're starting to see the inflation rates recede, right? In some parts of Europe, it's still going up. And the reason for that is because you have to remember the Brexit and the European unions and the way that whole part of the world works is entirely different than ours. So while yes, it's isolated in what a lot of their inflation issues are, it does trickle into our bond market. So we saw other countries' central banks raising rates like unexpectedly higher, like 0.5%, 0.75%. It was crazy. I think it was like an Asian country or something. They literally raised their central bank funding rate 6% overnight. Like we were freaking out about 3/4. They went up 6% overnight. And so whenever you're dealing with that kind of speculation and you have no like technical guidance, you really end up with markets that are all over the place. So there's days, and I would lock like on Wednesday this week, I locked a loan at 6.49% with relative like a couple $100 in points, right? It's good credit score buyer. 10% down, all that stuff, 6.49%. Yesterday, we're closing out the market, that same loan at 6.9. Yeah. So you're seeing a 0.5% swing in like 36 hours, which it's hard for home buyers. It's a challenging thing because on $300,000, that's $125, $130 a month that it's changing overnight. And so that's really it. We're still trading in this range, waiting on what is the Fed going to do? And then you've got the Fed in front of Congress and in front of the Senate really playing hardball, saying like, we need to raise rates. And there's like one part of the market that's like, we think he's doing this so he doesn't get the stock market and get people going crazy. And they're not stopping spending money, which I heard a fun term today. I'll tell you that in a second. And then there's the other part, where they're like, he's just bluffing because he doesn't want to rattle these markets. And there's the other people like, no, he is going to raise these rates, and he's in front of the Senate saying he's going to raise rates. So it's kind of a weird thing. The term I heard though today, it was on the radio, is funflation. So which goes back to this discretionary spending, right? And so and what they mean by funflation is like a lot of the big numbers right now, they're pushing higher and higher and higher, and people are not stopping spending money on vacations, concerts, and experience events. So if you think about like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, I don't know if you've tried to book a trip to Jamaica or if you've gotten scammed on Facebook, Taylor Swift tickets. But like you try to go to Jamaica, like it's cheaper to go to Europe than it is to Jamaica right now because of these crazy prices, and people are just still buying them, and like that's what the Federal Reserve is, Matt. They're like, dude, we have to figure out how to stop all this discretionary spending. That funflation is killing us, and people aren't stopping,
Well, let's break that down a little bit more. And because to your point, two things I looked at this week that display exactly what you're talking about. One is that even though interest rates are near 7%, purchase applications are up They're not down. They're up. And that's one thing I want to get your opinion on. And then the other thing is we just got the existing home sales report that also came in higher. So the thing is, to your point, even though interest rates are crazy high, home prices are crazy high. Yes, our home sales overall generally down for sure. But when we look at mortgage applications week over week over week over week, we almost had a double-digit increase in purchase apps. Yes, it's purchase season and all that stuff, but it's interesting. To your point, it's like, I think do you believe it's because buyers are just saying, well, it doesn't matter what interest rates are. I mean, people are going to buy a house, and I think that's my argument. I want to get your take on it, because if we look at the worst economic housing market we've ever went through in 2008, 2009, we still had about 4.5 million home sales, which is kind of like where we're at right now. And interest rates, before that, I mean, people are still going to purchase houses. Doesn't matter what interest rates are. Yes, that takes out some of the people out of the market. We've seen that. But my argument is, like, if you have a life event and you're going to move, the interest rate is the interest rate. You're not going to do anything about it. So what is your take on purchase apps being up, this, spending? People just doesn't seem like they care. All right, real quick, and then we'll get right back to the content. If you're a real estate agent, you're looking to build a listing-based business, a business where you can generate a multiple six-figure income, a business that doesn't require you to waste thousands of dollars on the new marketing gimmicks, then I'm going to invite you to click the link right underneath this video to learn about our Listing Agent Academy coaching program. This is a 6-month intense coaching system that more than 3,000 agents from every market all over the country have now gone through. And here's the reality. Here's the truth. I will shoot you straight. This program is not for everyone. This is for agents who value being around winners. They value being in a community of other real estate agents that actually show up, that actually put forth the work. And this is for agents that embrace high levels of accountability and visibility. To get the details, all you have to do is click the link beneath this video. You can schedule a coaching consultation, and then you can decide for yourself. So with that being said, let's jump back into the content.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. So purchase apps are up because we're coming off like a 26-year low. Remember last week I was like, hug your loan officers. It's been a rough go on mortgage applications. So that's a good, like, seeing them double is normal. We're also seasonally, everybody's finally out of school, right?
Yeah.
Like, school for the most part is finally done. And so this is when we should see it picking up. But to your point, as rates have gone up and as home prices have gone up, in the background, and again, going back to what the Fed is fighting, wages have gone up. And when you're looking at dual income families, and which a lot of them are, like, the majority of my application, I don't have like the stats, like this is like Main Street coming out of my brains, is that a dual income family right now, like a starting salary in a lot of places, like $70,000 to $80,000. If you get two of those people on a loan together, each making $180,000, or I'm sorry, $80,000, $160,000 a year, or roughly $13,000 a month in gross income. So if you're looking at housing ratios for that, you're looking at like 40% maybe. That's like a $3,500 to $4,000 mortgage payment that these people are signing up for. And the difference with that is they can get a house for that, a nice size house, or you can rent for $2,500 to $3,000 for the same thing that there's no advantage to. And so, between wage growth and then just seeing like the households that are buying right now, which are a little bit older, like we've talked about that before, the age of the first time home buyer is older, like the generation mom's basement that everybody used to like poke fun at has come out of mom's basement, making a damn good living, and then they're getting married or the partnerships, whatever they are, and they're buying these houses together with two nice incomes, and they're able to support these higher payments. Do they have a ton of cash to put down? Hell no, everything's expensive, and we got funflation. I spent my rather than paying points, I want Taylor Swift.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so much so, like all the data is supporting what you're saying. All the data.
Yeah.
It's like, well, half of it's doom and gloom, and then the other half, the data doesn't support that argument. Because the other thing I would bring to this conversation is I look at something every week called the list to sold price ratio. This is what buyers are willing to pay for houses. And last week it was like 98%. And again, I know this is a big week, right? But this week, the average home that sold this week was 100% list price to sold price, meaning these buyers are giving the sellers what they want. And so much so that in many, many instances, houses are still selling with multiple buyers willing to pay premiums. It's crazy.
Yeah, 100%. I'm seeing it. Every client I have out there buying right now is in, we're strategizing, hey, we can do this, or let me call this person. I'll send you some socks with tacos on them. I don't care what it takes, like figuring out ways to get deals done because you have to stand out. There are multiple offers, and there's still there's a ton of cash offers that are coming from parents and different people giving gifts for properties just to get those contracts won and then selling. I mean, there's just
so let me jump in. This is the part that I really want your thoughts on. Is on one hand, we're saying you're saying that you have all of these clients, all the data supports all this demand that one can't even argue. Purchase apps up, list to sold price ratios up, bidding wars. You've got all these people strategizing. So that's on one hand. And then on the other hand, the other argument is every headline seems to be talking about economic collapse, doom and gloom, prepare for the worse than 2008. How can both of those stories be true at the same time?
One of them makes you click on the article, and the other one is what the article is actually about.
Well said. Touche.
Yeah. So, I mean, to look at it, there will be again. So we're looking at previous actions, right? So the Fed in the past has done A and gotten B, and it's not working right now, and that's why you're seeing Jerome Powell being grilled in front of Congress about these things, right, and about unemployment and all these different things. And part of unemployment, and there's what we call the JOLTS report, which we look at as which is job openings over. It's basically how many job openings there are for every unemployed person. But a lot of these job openings that are out there is like you could be a remote employee for Dell computers, and you could be selling Dell computers from your home office. Well, they might list that job opening in 12 markets. And so that's 12 job openings for that one job because it's listed in different places. So it's like, so that's the rise, right? People see these job openings. That's what the Fed's looking at. And then you see, these large companies and these CEOs and like bank CEOs are the ones that are saying like a recession is coming, because they're the ones that are really at the front line of saying like, okay, we're seeing borrowing rates within large corporations decreasing. We're laying off employees, or, you see people out there on Main Street. They're like, I don't have a job. I can't get a good job and this and that. So it's a bunch of conflicting information that's just hard to figure out what it truly is. When you look at data and you look at what people are spending money on, there's no shortage of people out there spending money, and that's the hard part to wrap your head around.
It is, because that is exactly right. Yeah, it is super hard to wrap your head around. We've got this mall where we live here in Metro Detroit, and on one part of the mall, it's like super, super high end stuff. Like you gotta like the Gucci store and the Prada store and the Louis Vuitton store. Well, here's what's interesting. There's lines down the mall to get in there to spend $5,000 for a purse. People are walking out with $1,400 belts, and, I think what we're in that you and I quite often talk about as it relates to the housing market is more of a transaction crisis than anything else. But then when I think about that, I even argue with myself to say, well, maybe not. Maybe what we're in is just normal. Maybe when we look at a 6.5 million home sales market, that actually be the weird thing, that be the anomaly, and that 4.5 million transaction might be normal. What I mean by that is what we're seeing is doesn't matter what interest rates are, that we're hovering around this seasonally adjusted home sales trajectory of about 4.5 million home sales, no matter what rates are. It's only that when interest rates go really, really down, do you have these people who say, well, shit, if you're going to give me money at that cheap, sure, I'll buy a house. Sure, I'll buy a car. Sure, I'll do that. But I think maybe 4.5 million, maybe this is just normal. Maybe there's nothing wrong with this. Maybe it's not a transaction crisis. Maybe that, like I said, this is maybe the new normal. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I agree with that. The thing that's going through my head is like the part that's making it abnormal is because there's a whole lot of real estate agents and there's a whole lot of loan officers that had a lot of success over the last couple of years. And the reason
as a result of the anomaly.
Right. And
that's why we have so many. Go ahead.
Is it a crisis? Well, it's a crisis because there's so many people out there wanting a piece of that pie.
Yeah.
That it's a crisis, right? Where there's not enough for some people. And that's might be because there's some people there's still a lot of fish in that pond, where you're going to start to see just as like natural selection, right? Like that, as fewer and fewer fish are in that pond, it becomes less of a crisis because it's not overstaffed to handle that number of transactions. There's also an interesting statistic out there is that 90% of mortgages in America are below 6% right now. And so, I think that 6% is a mental barrier. I think when people get that 6 handle in front of their rate that have had less really struggle with it. But I do think that when we see interest rates fall below 6, that we will see, I think we will see an increase in activity. And the people that are leaving those situations are going to be the people that have owned homes for the last several years, who have held on to all this equity, that are going to come out of those homes with $300,000 and $400,000 down payments on new homes. And you're going to see, again, it's going to fuel that demand again, and the part of it that's interesting is that we're not building homes fast enough in order for that demand, for that who will pay more. There's not enough inventory out there to absorb the amount more people are willing to pay. So again, we're going to continue to see home prices move up, which is a good thing for us that own homes. Yeah. But for people, again, entering the market, it's going to be like a whole nother, like, man, how do we fix this thing when maybe it's just normal? It's just a lot of people want, like, too many people after too few goods. It's just a housing inflation issue. And I don't see how we fix that, especially as rates start to come down and that demand picks up.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, we're just coming off another record, which is record low inventories. This is why home prices keep inching their way. It's what's keeping them at bay, no matter how low maybe the demand is or how low home sales are. Doesn't matter, because you got record low inventory. So much so, we're sitting at about 1 million total homes on the market, including active and under contract. Active, here's the craziest thing. When I look at this is like tells the whole market. Last week, do you know how many homes hit the market last week?
No.
Yeah, well,
you do though.
Yeah, I do. 63,000 homes hit the market. Do you know what that puts us total active homes for people to go out there and actually purchase? Oh, that's right. About 450,000 homes. That's it. Putting that into perspective, in just 2015, when we had 1.2, 1.3 million homes to choose from, when the total active and pending is at 1 million versus where it was in 2007 at 4 million. It's crazy. And the thing I look at, Steve, is, can you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Going back to home sales and this thing being an anomaly, you could see on the right-hand side, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 million, 5 million, 6 million, 7 million home sales in the country per year, right? Okay, well, I'm not a mathematician, but I can draw a line across this thing. You probably could do it better than me, Steve, to say, okay, well, what is the median? And if you draw this thing, you probably find yourself maybe around 4, maybe even a little bit lower. If you look at all the way back to 1970 and you fast forward to right now, you can clearly see the anomalies of 2020, 2021, and then the other one of 2005. So that's why I say I don't even know if we're in a transaction crisis. It's to your point, we hit the jackpot of the real estate business, which had every Tom, Dick, and Harry get their real estate license, become a mortgage loan officer, get rich really, really fast, make a lot of money quickly. And now that we're in a normal market, all those people are like, this is crazy. This is a crisis, a housing market crash. No, this is called normal. You just got in the business during the gold rush.
Yeah. And that goes back to like a whole other mindset thing of adaptability and understanding how to adapt in a normal market, right? Which is probably something more. You probably have like a study that you know of that's got like a fancy word and title and like a whole psychiatric,
Well, the problem here's the issue. Here's the issue. The issue is little cousin Johnny can go get his mortgage loan officer license or his real estate license over a weekend, come into work on Monday, list a property or sit his ass in a chair and have no skills whatsoever, put this thing on the market, get 45 offers, look like an absolute superhero to no credit of his own. It's just a reflection of the market. When you talk about a professionals market that we're in, most of these people are fucking lost.
Yeah.
They have no idea how to price real estate. They have no idea how to structure a loan when the rate isn't 3.5%. Anybody's going to get the loan when it's free, when the rate's at historical low. And so now we're in a professionals market. And this is why all the real estate agents and mortgage loan officers are freaking out, because it's like, well, yeah, you need some skill, dude.
Yeah. Got to think about them now.
Yeah. It's not shooting fish in a barrel no more. So anyway, looking ahead now, let's just look into next week. Is there anything coming out next week that will impact rates?
Not a ton. So again, we're going to be back to speculation. I think we're going to get our home price appreciation numbers, which is always interesting to look at. All the inflation figures that we're getting are pretty positive, and so we're going to see a lot of talk about the Fed and what they're going to do in their next meetings and how they'll handle some of that positive information. The following week, though, we will get our employment numbers, which are always a big market. That one gets everybody excited. That number continues to blow it out, with jobs added. And so, it's so funny because recessions in our world, right? Recessions are good for housing and they're good for mortgages and all that kind of thing. And a recession would help everybody that's bought a house in the last 6 months. Everybody that bought a house in the last 6 months, if we go into a big recession, you are going to save a ton of money on your mortgage. The other part of that, though, that's making this challenging is I shouldn't say challenging, it's making it interesting, though, is that we're continuing to add these jobs. And if we can add these jobs and still fight price inflation for goods, can really be a good thing for our economy. Imagine a world where we get this price growth under control. We don't have to go through like massive job loss.
Yeah.
And so there'll just be, it'll just be some, and we'll follow back up on it. There will be some like boring technical stuff that we can touch on next week and try to make it simple, but just looking at some of like the yield curves and different things like that to show, again, going back to technicals, like all of these things in any other recession have been like, this is a recession and it's bad. And in our case, this time around, it's not. So we'll get some more of that technical data and we'll fill you in on that too.
Yeah. So, all right, let's shift gears and let's get into the numbers. And so anybody that's watching this in our live mastermind, you have access to this slide deck that I'm going to share with you guys right now. I highly, highly recommend that you just grab your loan officer partner the same way I'm doing with Steve every week and you make a local housing market update. That's what I would recommend that you do. So I'm going to go through these. Steve, I want your thoughts on these. And we'll go through these quickly just so people can kind of see what's happening week over week. All right. So this is last week, right? So that's when we get the numbers. So median sales price, we talked about that a little bit, but we're at 382, and that was up from last week at 379. I think that's just a byproduct of where we're at in the housing market and people being out of school. And so home sales prices average across the country, 382. Number of new listings, we talked about this. This is up from last week. Again, this is just a reflection, I think, of the market and everybody, Steve, I think to your point, being out of school. So last week, 55,000 homes hit the market. This past week, 63,000 homes hit the market. That will help, and I think I told you this off the show. Even in our market, I'm seeing a lot more properties come to market. Are you starting to see that a bit more, like with your clients?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. It's not crazy, but yeah, there's more options out there.
Yeah, it isn't crazy, but there is more. Like I told you, in that first home buyer market, like in our market, if you were look for anything under 300K in our market, your results would come back as 0 searches found. Now there's some stuff out there. Active listings. This is the big one, right? This is not taking into consideration pending. This is just what do buyers have access to purchase right now? This is that number, 451,000. We compare that to the last crash when we had this number was like at 4 million. It's crazy. Months of supply, we're at 2.5. We're still very much so in a seller's market, people. So as much as we want to argue it's collapsing, we're in a seller's market. It's not until these numbers get closer to 5.5, 6 months, do we start to see us in more of a buyer's market. Days on market are also down, so homes are selling faster. Again, we're getting into peak home buying season, so this is no surprise. And then our, did that change or no? Let's go back to that. List to sold price ratio, I talked about that. 100%, just again, time of year. Price reductions at about 5%, meaning that 95% of the homes are selling without having to change the price. Again, as a result of them getting what they want. So that's a really good thing for sellers.
I love to see the data that shows which one, what bucket is reducing the price. Because there's a lot of, just in what I'm looking at, like a home search that I have set up that you have set up for me, I think it's like a 500 to 900,000, just so we can see the market. And the one, it's all in that, like I see so many of that, like 600 to 700,000 house that's being reduced. It's not the 450 houses. It's not the 350 houses. It's those higher end houses that people are just kind of throwing out there to see if they'll sell at that price type of thing. Point. You know what I mean?
I'm going to add that actually to the weekly housing market, and we'll look at that because it's funny you brought that up, and I'll be quick. But yesterday in a coaching session, I was teaching agents how to find out buyer demand by market, by price bracket. And so that's exactly what you're talking about is of the transactions in your market, we need to see, okay, maybe you find 80% of if you're in a market that's, call it the average price 400, then you're to your point, between 300 and 500, you probably have 80% of the transactions there. There's no reductions there. But when you start to go up in price and there's fewer and fewer transactions, there probably are more and more. All right, average mortgage rates, this is where they ended last week, 6.9% roughly. And I think that's what you're seeing even Friday right now. And then purchase mortgage applications. Again, these are up. And I get the argument that you have, Steve, like, hey, it's time of year. That's totally fair. There's no counter argument from me there. But it'll be interesting to see if just rates can tick down a bit. This summer still will be really good. Even though the beginning, this was like the first week of the summer home buying season, all the numbers are up to our favor. It's not crazy. It's not anything to get real excited about. To be fair, they are up. If rates can come down, I think that the people in this business can have a great, great summer.
For sure. And in the last couple of years, and it's been a banana. Like those years have been like you call it, an anomaly. But at the same time, like the home buying season is so much defined anymore by home buying season, as I think that now it's going to be, we will see, because we know rates are going to come down. It is going to happen. Like rates will come down. Like it's just a function of like federal easing. It's like the Federal Reserve is even saying like we're tightening longer than we thought, and we're
just
doing
a matter
more
of time,
than,
is what you're saying.
and so, and again, that though it will happen, and whether it's the last quarter of this year, or the first quarter of next year, I think that pretty soon, for a while, the rates might begin to dictate home buying season.
It's a great point. Well, Steve, we appreciate you. Everybody else, enjoy the weekend. Make sure you finish the week strong so that you can rest and recover without feeling guilty, because weekends are earned.